Hey guys, this is Valde from Moji here. Danish Counter-Strike is one hell of a drug, but so is Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be Twistzz, formerly of Team Liquid, obviously now of FaZe Clan. Right, Twistzz, one thing I wanted to start out this interview with is most people, I actually think, must know the detail that you were fairly young when you became a top pro. Like, I actually don't think people do, like, put it in time frame, though. Like, I noticed if people look at the early Team Liquid, I don't think they realise how young you were back then. But if people don't know, even years before that, you were around the scene, people will know, like, you can go before, obviously, the Misfits, and then, but you go back further, TSM, etc. I saw when I looked back on the old archives of the fucking wikis that actually way back in the day, for a brief period, you did play with the notorious Ocean, who, if people don't know, they try. This is why I wanted to ask this dude, because I don't know myself. I'm not from the NA scene, so I don't know how much of this is a meme and how much is real. But people used to try and make it sound like he was sort of the NA Hunden, which obviously now sounds really drastic. But what I mean is, like, he was the person where everyone said, like, as an IGL, he's not, like, quite good enough to be at the top level, but he's, like, does a decent job as an in-game leader or whatever, and he somehow, like, brings talent through. Was that a meme? Was that real? Was he actually someone who sort of, like, helped you in the early days?
I actually think there's a lot of merit to that. I think he was pretty much a talent scout, you know? I guess you can kind of look at Copenhagen Flames now, I guess. Would be like the Hooksy is creating these players be talents for upcoming Danish teams, but now they've chosen to stay together. But back then, Ocean was like the talent scout. At least played for a couple maps for his team in the past. Obviously, Stewie. So like a lot of the good NA players, I guess, came from his previous teams. So I mean, that doesn't happen by a fluke, you know. It has to. He found us.
Okay. In the early days when you were coming up, if people don't know, one thing, somehow, even though there's loads of NA pros, it's like everyone like skips the early part of their career and you never get the story. But if people don't know, it's actually really, really difficult to become known in the NA scene because there's a couple of reasons why, dude. One is, if people don't know, now they sort of seem to have gotten something like reason. I actually give credit to ESL for this. Like the ESEA like Premier system just below like real invite and proper pro level actually does seem to have given like something like a path to pro. But if you remember the days when that wasn't really up and running, the problem was, unless you got to the invite level, it was like essentially like the analogy would be, this would be a weird analogy, but in the sci-fi universe of the character Judge Dredd, right? Everyone lives in these massive metropolises, but if you don't live there, dude, you just live in what's like a toxic wasteland of just like an apocalypse together. And everyone in there, by the way, is just, there's no rules, they're all fighting each other to death. That's what open is like if people don't know. Like, you literally play against cheaters, a million people who are swapping teams constantly, people are match fixing all the time. People don't realize it's like to climb out of this is so difficult. Like, even if you're good, like there's plenty of people took, you know, the wrong team, the wrong angle, they split up to. So how do you get out of this angle? Like, did you really just rise quickly? Was it not that hard to navigate?
I guess so. For me, I had a group of friends that I played with, and we decided to create an open team together. And I think I was 14 at the time, so it's kind of just played with friends, and then we felt like we were making progression. And then we went to like intermediate, and then I had to make the choice to, I guess, leave my friends back then, and I joined like a main team. And then halfway through the main season, I think I left to join a premier team that had X like 1.6 pros on it, called Tectonic. And I think it all happened very fast. It all happened, I think, within like
that's pretty smooth then.
Yeah, all within like 9 months, I think. And then at the end of that time, I only think I played like 1 month on Tectonic, and I was I got into the first iteration of FPL due to my connections with the 1.6 pros, and yeah, from playing FPL, I guess that's how Ocean found me.
Right, fair enough. By the way, since you were so young, like you say, you were 14 years old, were you actually good enough that people assumed you cheated? Because unfortunately, if you're really good and you're really young, the assumption is you cheat, right?
I don't think people assume that during like the main seasons or ever, the premier seasons. Although, if I remember correctly, my premier season, I had to play with like 100 ping the whole season. And back then, I feel like I still put up good numbers. And,
is this just because of where you were living in Canada or something?
Yeah, I was like in the middle of nowhere, and like, I kind of like left my hometown like 30 minutes away, and there was like no good internet. Some weird situation in my life, and then I think during Face It, that's when people started suspecting. There was some like small like cheat accusations going around, but I think I got cleared like pretty quickly because things were just moving fast, and I was able to play the first season of like Pro League on the SKDC.
Even though the squad that they made into the first ever TSM squad, oh, sorry, not the second one, technically, because obviously the first one was the Danish one, but if people remember the first NA TSM squad, that it was the team that people probably got to know you from. The interesting detail is there was 2 players on this team. It was you and it was Sick, who were like the young guys coming up. And if people don't remember, at the time, actually, it was actually Sick that all the hype was around, I seem to remember. And you were like more of a, as you say, you were pretty new to the scene. You were just coming up, right? Listen, even though the squad itself, like, he has a couple of veterans that were like, obviously Semphis was in Cloud9 and stuff. He had some veteran players, but like, even though it's a TSM team, to me, like, I wanted to know, how did this place? Because on the one hand, it's not like it was a world beater team. It wasn't as enormous as maybe people might think of TSM in League. But like, TSM, the brand, is an enormous org. Like, did joining this team, did it signal you've made it? Do you think I've got a real career now?
I think it felt good, but obviously this is the time to reflect. And I've thought about this in the past, and I feel like if I didn't sign with TSM and I waited 3 more months, I actually think Liquid would have picked me up earlier.
Oh, okay.
So I think waiting, it was just like trial period. I went through a whole year on an NA team, even got to play with Sean Garrett after that. So who knows? Maybe that was the right decision anyway, to learn from other in-game leaders before having a chance at Tier 1. But yeah, the team itself, TSM, I don't know. I think it was weird, and probably the highlight of us as a team was probably when we beat Cloud9 at, I think, our first international LAN. It was like ECS finals or whatever.
Right.
I think that was probably the highlight. We beat Astralis in the BO1, and then we beat the Cloud9 in the BO3, and that was probably the peak of our team, honestly. And in terms of like any mentorships on the team or whatever, I think Valens was probably the best figure to have. I think he taught a lot. I think it was a rough environment for a new player. Just typical like messy like NA drama. And when you look at the org, you think it would be really prestigious, but I think they barely cared about their CS team, and
Right.
they gave us the bare minimum, honestly. And I think this was stated in the past. The only reason TSM ended up having a team was because E-League was going to fine them big money if they
Right.
couldn't create a team. So I think that's the only reason we even existed.
Certainly could be the case. One thing I wanted to ask briefly about, because I've always puzzled about this myself, is there was 2 different teams that autimatic played in. Before this, if you remember, he played in that Nihilum team with like Hiko and those guys, and then he played in this team with Semphis. And dude, this is crazy, because when he later went on to Cloud9, and obviously was a really great player and won the major, everything, right? Later on, everyone's going to tell you they always knew he was good. Dude, nobody ever told me this player was good. All my friends who were in these teams, they all told me like, no one really knows what he does. He's all right, I guess. He's a bit of a beta, but like, you know, nobody ever hyped this player. Like, who was autimatic when you played with him back then? Was he actually already anything approaching the player we know later?
I think joining Cloud9 gave him a huge confidence boost, and it completely changed him as a player, and he became that more star figure. I think before that, before even joining TSM, I think the only reason I knew he was good was because Swag and the scene thought autimatic was really good for whatever reason.
Right,
And
okay.
back then I was just like, okay, if Swag thinks he's good, like there must be something. There must be something to him. And I just took his opinion with no grain of salt. And then I guess he ended up being right.
Yeah, that's a good call sign. Okay.
He was right. But on the TSM team, I guess he was the closest we had to a star. I guess like a consistent performer besides like myself and I guess Sick. But I think the team just, I don't know, had too much drama and not enough leadership to actually progress. But it's not like we had like bad NA players, you know? Like we were kind of like the up and coming like NA players, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, obviously myself and autimatic got their chances at Tier 1.
To be fair, if people don't know, like in that mess years and years ago before they all got banned in iBUYPOWER, like if people don't know, at the end of that lineup, they actually like kicked out Steel and Dazed, and they actually brought in like Nitro was one of the players. And the funny thing is, like at the time, again, people were like, "What the fuck? Why are you bringing up?" So actually, Swag must have a pretty good eye, mate. Yeah, he's picked out some pretty good players. Hasn't gone wrong too many times. Right, here's the question I have then. Along those lines, though, what was your perspective on play then? Like, were you someone, since as you said, like maybe autimatic, like had more confidence, maybe saw himself more as a star in Cloud9. Who was Twistzz at this period in time before you get to Liquid when you're in these teams? TSM, Misfits, like, did you think of yourself as like, I'm supposed to be a star player, I'm supposed to be a skill? How did you envision Twistzz the player back then?
I don't think I was put in that direction, so to speak. I think when I going from SKDC, where Ocean intentionally put me like in every. I don't think there was a time where I wasn't in a situation where I wasn't able to get a kill. He set me up
Right.
for success pretty much. And when I went to TSM, it was kind of the complete, I guess, opposite. I played a lot of supportive positions, a lot of anchor positions, like B Abs and Mirage and stuff. So I moved around a lot, and I guess that's where my learning process started of playing way more difficult positions. Because for me, like playing like A on overpass was like easy, you know. Like I would just go and aim duel everyone, and there was nothing players could really do against it. But yeah, I had to take a new approach to the CS, and I think that's where I guess I just became like an anchor. That's where it started building for me.
Right. Because that's one thing, again, that maybe a fan doesn't understand is, especially in this era, this is the era where like coaches have only just been introduced. And again, how much power do they have back then? And a lot of the teams, realistically, are run by the players, especially veteran players, people who've been in 1.6 or bigger teams. And I have to say, if fans don't know, the reason why a lot of young players like sometimes take some extra time to develop, or they don't come the player that you think they are till years later. It's because sometimes when they join those teams, it's sort of like, right, well, we were all here first, so we've all got our spots and our roles. You just do whatever, you know, the last guy kicked did, or whatever's available. Like people don't realize it's hard to battle those guys when they're the established people. It's their team that they brought you in, right? Were you sort of like forced into these roles? Was it just, were you willing to do it?
I think it was a combination of both. I was obviously very, very new and unexperienced, and I think I was just happy to be there. So I took whatever was given to me, and I gave my best shot at it. So I think, I mean, I could have, like I said, I think it could have been better with better leadership, you know? Like if there was different pieces on the team to lead, like Sean Garrett's, for instance. That's like, I think when I started playing with Sean, that's when everything changed for me. He like taught me so much about the game. I like finally understood like rotations, how to punish players. I was given a lot more starter positions, like rotator positions, and I started to flourish more as a player and grow into something.
If people know the best years you had in Liquid, so we'll talk like 2017, maybe the problem is stats wise, maybe 2019. But I always thought it was the era when like you got your roles, exactly how you want to play. How would you contrast how you played with Misfits and Sean Gers? How was that what people might know of the kind of roles you might positions you'd been in Liquid?
I think it was slightly different. I mean, I was given a lot of anchor and I guess like semi-supportive positions in Liquid, but I think the leadership was just better. Like Stan was just a better caller than obviously what I had in TSM before that. So it didn't really matter if I played different positions, and I played with way better teammates. So my CT anchor positions didn't seem so bad because I had good support around me too. So I think going from Misfits, like for instance, I think on Cobblestone, I went from playing A to being a drop player, and I don't know. I think it was just a confidence boost of finally being like on a tier 1 team that let me grow, and I was very confident in myself when I first made the switch.
When you first came to Liquid, people might not realise this because you had so many years where it was an elite team, it was always in the mix internationally. People might not know the first period that you were in Liquid was actually one of the worst periods the team's had in years. It's where they made all these big signings. They got you, Stanislaw came, Zeus came as a coach, and everything was looking like, fuck, this should be like the time for Liquid. And if people don't know, that was actually the lineup that famously, for some reason, while Stanislaw was the in-game leader, something just didn't work. Something was just off with the squad. What do you put it on when you look back now? Because on paper, again, still, you look at that roster today, do you like, this should be way better than these placings, you know?
There was definitely some animosity in the team, and I think the trio of Nitro, Stanislaw, and Zeus, they didn't really see eye to eye. And the reason I say Nitro as well, because he's the secondary caller. So if the main caller and secondary caller are on the same page, then it's difficult. And then, yeah, who was our opera at the time? I think JDM.
JDM, I think, yeah.
Yeah. I think the team had some issues even with him back then. So it was still like messy, you know? Like when I joined, I was obviously super confident and happy, but I think even then there were some underlying issues that the other guys still saw, and I think they knew that the team was still in for some changes. But I think the main issue was probably Stanislaw and Zeus. There was always a lot of conflict between them, and they never saw eye to eye. They never saw the game the same way. And Zeus is one of those coaches that, you know, will call a strategy when he takes attack timeouts. I haven't had that really with any other coaches. He was like the only one that really would do that. And I think that's why it caused issue, you know? Like maybe Stanislaw felt disrespected that the coach wanted the overcall without having like the whole overview probably.
Because then you had that weird scenario where, again, the reason why I always have to mention that it was when he was the in-game leader was the problem, is because technically he stayed in the lineup later. You made it where it was like Nitro became the IGL. If you remember, Stanislaw was almost like some sort of like, he was always on the outskirts of the map as like a lurker or something at that point. And basically, even though actually it's not like he was like popping off individually, somehow the team just worked way better. If people remember, that's when you made the 2 international finals. You had the Mykonos final, the ESL New York final. Like, the team was actually good. This was when you were beating SK, who was like the #1 ranked team in the world. So how did that work? Like, because obviously in that scenario, like it seems like it was inevitable eventually Stanislaw was going to be phased out. But how did this sort of like makeshift team work where he stayed in the team but he wasn't the leader? But like it seemed like somehow he sort of like you found a structure or a band-aid, right?
I think I think we just found a good balance in the calling style, and Nitro's initial calling style was very fast-paced and like pretty scrimmy, but there was like cohesion in it, whereas Stan took a way more slow approach to the game. So when Stan became like the mid-round caller, and Nitro became like the initial like game plan. You know, like he had a good idea to put everyone in like good positions. I think that's when we started finding success, and I think Stanislaw being like the main lurker. I actually have no idea who would have like been lurking at the time. Maybe even Nitro. But I always thought playing with Nick, like he was always like in an entry position or he was opping.
Sure felt like it, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why we found more success. Was I think Nick just started entering like a lot more and was able to create space for Elysian myself.
Right, one thing I want to ask you was this. When you were coming up in the scene and you come into squads like Team Liquid, if you're an NA player, what are actually the expectations? Like, does it seem, for example, even though someone hasn't done it yet, does it seem possible that like an NA team could be #1? We can win the major. You know, what actually seems like a reasonable expectation when you're at that point in your career?
Oh, at that point. I thought you were talking about now.
No, I meant back then, yeah.
Yeah, back then.
Funny enough, it's in now a topical question again, but that's probably more towards the end of the interview.
Yeah, right. I'd say back then is like, I think the expectation's low. I think our goals that were set as a team was always, you know, make semis, and then if we make finals, then we had a fucking good run, you know? And, I mean, there was just way better teams at the time than we could have. I mean, when FaZe was in their prime with this like Nico, Rain, and Olaf roster, it's fucking hard to play against. I mean, this like New York final, it's like it was my first like really big final ever in my career, and I just get railed by Nico and Rain the whole time in a best of 5. So it was like a pretty new experience for me. But I think expectations in terms of winning like big events, definitely low. I think we were just hoping to be a constant playoff contender.
When you were in that scenario, I always wondered this, right? Because obviously that final, the New York final you're referring to, if people don't remember, it was the first tournament that FaZe Clan had the brand new lineup at, and basically they won the whole tournament without dropping a map. And then you guys came the closest because you had the overpass game, everyone remembers, where it went like 16-14 or whatever. But aside from that, they were just brutalising everyone. Every game was like 16-3. People remember they won every fucking pistol round. Like Nico had like, it was like, I think it was the highest rating ever or some crap like that in the event. Like, this was like the perfect storm to run into where like, basically there was almost nothing you could do against that, right? Like I think even if people hadn't have, you know, like lost the first map and felt down, I don't know anyone could win that game that day.
Yeah, that's how it felt. And I remember opening my phone before the final day, and I saw like HLTV posted a stat that Nico and myself were like the MVP contenders going into the final, and I was like, huh, really? And then in the final we just get completely fucking owned, and it was funny to me. But yeah, I don't think there's anything we could have done against Rain and Nico in that form. It was, I mean, even though Nico had like a 1.7 rating, like Rain was behind him with a 1.5, and for
sure.
2 players on the same team to have that rating is like, good luck, man.
When you were at this time period, like these wins though, right, here's the problem. I know in American sports, people love the idea of like the moral victory. Like, you know, we proved something to ourselves though. Like usually that's bullshit, I have to say, because in a lot of cases, if someone really did think they could win, there's no amount of like great reasons as to why you lost. Like, that's okay though, because, you know, you played great. Like, but in this kind of scenario, like, that's why I asked about your expectations. If you're coming in though, and especially after the period previously, you're not thinking we're going to win the tournament. Actually, to make a final can be sort of like, hey, we're on the right track at least, right? Things are looking up, right? when you came to the next version of the squad, is obviously the one where Stanislaw had to move out. They went through this next period, and then eventually we arrived at the squad everyone starts to recognise, which is the one where Taco came and joined, and you had the team for 2018 that had NAF in it, etc. Right? Did you actually think that this was the squad? Like, did you know bringing these players in was the right move? Whose idea was it to get Taco, for example? Like to me, it's a great move, but I don't know. I always thought NA players kind of didn't realise what support players did. Sort of. I was surprised people kind of appreciated him. You know, normally they just look at the fraggers, don't they?
I think, of course, Zeus. I mean, we still had Zeus at the time, so I think Zeus was just like, he wanted another Brazilian player, and Steel was great for us. And the sad thing about Steel is that we didn't actually want to remove Steel. He just left. He felt like he
left of his own accord, right? Didn't he say something like he just didn't think he could play well or something bizarre?
Yeah, he said he felt like he wasn't good enough for us. And I was pretty sad when he said that. I was like, damn. I was like, I felt like we tried everything to make him feel as comfortable, you know. I never felt like he really played that bad, and I felt like he was doing the role, which is what Taco ended up doing for us, pretty good. And I mean, we won Summit with him too, so we won an event with Steel. Yeah. And when Taco came in, I think that's when we started off a bit slow with Taco, and then things really started rolling, and I think we just had the right pieces, you know. Like, we didn't really think of having that we had an opera issue. I think Nick did a great job at holding that role down and learning about it as much as he could and try to contend with the best offers. And of course, Naf is just he's a big match player. He shows up pretty much every time you need him to, and he's very consistent. So I thought for sure that this was the lineup, and I mean, we got close.
It was pretty good
many times, but then if Astralis didn't exist, we would have been there many times. But I think besides Astralis, we were without a doubt the second best team of 2018.
Right, one of the things about this team that I always thought was very interesting was, I know fans now are just going to think of the 2019 lineup because of all the success, but the 2018 lineup was way more trying to have like structure in the squad and have like tactics and like a pacing to the game, and like basically if people know Zeus's style of like what he likes his teams to do, like it felt like it was a more tactical squad than the later versions with Stewie. Would you agree?
Yeah, of course. And I actually started to feel like that's why we were always falling to Astralis. It's like you're trying to play the taxes better than a team that is doing it by far better than anyone else. And it's just like, I feel like we were just living in the shadow of Astralis. We were playing the same style as them, and it would work amazing against other teams, but you can't do it against them. And I feel like we started lacking aggression as a team. But I think you're definitely right. That was the most tactically sound era of Team Liquid.
Right. Since we referenced earlier, in 2017 at New York was the one where you got to the final, but then sadly, FaZe just turned up like with the fucking Infinity Gauntlet or something and just destroyed everyone and no one could do anything. We all know that one. But obviously the next year was this one where, even though again you lost unfortunately, was where you had the epic pop-off in the best of 5 against Mouse Sports, where, if people don't know, I think you had like 100 kills, you had like some absurd, like the stats all looked amazing basically, right? That's a tournament I want to ask about, because I feel like that ties into what I said earlier. Like, it's all well and good if people tell you, oh, you know, pat you on the back, you played great, I think you might even did you win the MVP of the event? I think you did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all great individually, but that has to be a final where, like, this is where someone who's not a competitor might not get this. If you actually play amazingly in a final and you lose, there isn't really any consolation, right? You're like, yeah, but I played great, like I'm supposed to win.
Yeah, that's actually how it felt, and that's why I was so miserable afterwards. I was like, because the stats don't matter if you're not winning the fucking trophy. It's like that every time, you know, and Simple felt that for the longest time, you know. It doesn't matter how good you play, if you don't have the glory of lifting the trophy, then what are you really doing, you know? Then there's something else wrong, and I mean, even though you played good, you're still simply not good enough. And yeah, I think that's how it felt after New York, and I still felt like New York 2018 was supposed to be our trophy lift, our big trophy lift for the first time as a team, and I mean, clearly at the time we didn't deserve it. I mean, it was quite a bizarre choke, probably still one of the biggest in my career, and it's sad because it's hard to figure out why it happened back then, when
Sure.
I felt like myself was playing like such a good game that I couldn't. And the thing is, like, now it's like with so much more experience, now I know why it happened, you know? back then, it's sad because I'm still like kind of inexperienced, and I'm hitting a lot of good shots, and I'm having really good positioning, and I'm like reading the game, but I didn't have the experience to adapt and help my team adapt to what was happening. And now it's like, well, now like I would never let it happen to my teammates. I really like understand the game way better now, and I think that's why looking back is just even more sad at this loss.
That's an interesting topic, though. Let's keep on this line, though, because I'll tell you something. From knowing many of the great players who were the carries of their teams and with all the guys who won the MVPs, this is actually a topic that won't have been explored in many interviews, but I'd be interested to ask you about. So basically, I've actually found what you've just said there is basically the difference between someone who becomes a really good player. So they might be like on one of these top 20 lists, but like they're just in their first year. I'll give you an example. What about like Keserato from Fury? He's obviously like a mad skilled player. If Fury does well, he might be the MVP, but he's clearly not like simple. There's clearly a difference there, and one of the differences is this, from what I can tell from talking to them, is like you say. Like, to me, the player who's just a skilled player, like he's just a star player, is the guy who he goes, he plays his spots, he takes on his duels, he takes his fights, he takes his clutches, he wins them or he doesn't, and he lives and dies, and then he sort of looks at the rest of the team like, what did the rest of them do? But what you're saying is like a very key point. It's like, if you're really like a superstar player and you really think you know the game, sometimes you have to actually have to sort of say, like, I'm just going to have to do things that I would never normally do to win this specific game. Like, I'll give you an example. Back in the day in 1.6, people like Neo, they would actually just sometimes, maybe they swap a CT position, they opt for this half because they know that site's open, so it's no point, when they come to my site, I get a highlight, but then we lose the game and I get to go, well, was it me who lost? Like, you lost the game. If you're that obsessed with winning, sometimes you got to kind of like, you got to mix it up a little bit. You got to do things that don't make traditional sense. It's counterintuitive in a way to sort of do this. So, and also, it's tricky to do that with teammates. You don't want to like cripple that guy's confidence by saying, I want to swap to your spot, but at the same time, it might win this next key gun round. So what do you think on this topic? Because again, there's always a negotiation with what you're doing in a match and with your teammates and how you approach it, right?
Well, I think, now in CSGO, I think the game's way more multi-dimensional, and I think there's a lot of answers for a lot of situations. And I think definitely in the current meta of CS, a player doesn't really have to take that approach anymore, unless he is like a really good primary opper. Any really good opper has the ability to take over a game. I mean, like Brokey pretty much did for us at Katowice this year.
Sure.
He definitely took over a lot of games, and it's because he had the right reads and he put people in their positions. Where you're a rifler, you have to read the game in a different way. Like the clearest example to give would be like if a team is taking fast mid control on Mirage like 2 rounds in a row, and you take attack time out to discuss it. The other team's probably discussing that you're about to adapt to this play, and then if you recognize your teammates aren't recognizing the situation, then you make a call where it's like, okay, fake the mid control. I'm gonna hide at the bomb site that I think they're gonna hit, and that's how, as a rifler, you try to stay one step ahead of the game.
Right.
And it's not like putting yourself in the star position. Like sometimes I could tell my teammate to go hide there, and it's the same outcome. Like I'll be the one that's faking mid control, and I'm just as happy as when my teammate gets all the kills because I knew it was the right read. And I think you're right. I think that is the difference between just a good player that fills his roles and does his best for the team, and the difference between a good player that is trying to help his entire team be one step ahead of the enemy team.
Right, this is obviously a loaded question when you ask someone who has been a star player and considered a skilled player, but I'll ask it anyway. Right, another thing that is a question I want to ask is this, right? Whenever I've known players, people like Simple are great examples, who were like clearly some of the best talents ever, and the rep actually around them, dude, is like they're selfish. It's the idea that, you play too much for yourself, or you only care about, like what you're doing, and you're too hard on teammates and stuff. One thing I always told players like that is like, look, the whole teammate thing, you've got to figure that out. But actually, the idea you're selfish, you can go awry if you listen to that too much, though, because I do think there's times in a game where, like the example you just gave, I agree, there's certain times where it's also even potentially going to boost a teammate's confidence if you're essentially setting him up to be the one that closes the play, and you're going to maybe fake or drive people to him, etc. But there's also some scenarios where maybe Twistzz is the only one who can do this particular play, right? Sometimes you have to like take the game by the scruff of the neck yourself, right? You have to get... Sometimes isn't a responsibility for Twistzz to put himself in the best spot to get the kills that maybe another teammate might not be able to?
Yeah, of course. I think unintentionally, I do it sometimes. Like on Mirage, I moved positions to short, and I don't always feel like I have the best impact because I'm still a new short player. Whereas I was a con player before. I had a whole year to learn and watch and play through con. And sometimes where I feel like if we're lacking mid control, like I'll just put myself in con because, you know, like I don't care if I'll take the risk if they don't flash con. You know, like I'll just stay there and hold an angle, and if they peek into me, they're gonna lose the round. And that's the calls I make sometimes for myself. You know, like I'll just say let's double con this round, but I just never leave. I just stay there the whole time. And yeah, I think in a good team environment, any player can really make that call. Like if Kerrigan even does that to put himself in a good spot, like I'm not mad. I mean Kerrigan has a huge brain. I believe in whatever he's gonna say and what he wants to do. So I think there's a lot of merit to that. I think it's just different between like an opper and a rifler, because an opper can get away with so much more stuff. Where I think the selfish playstyle really fits, and that's why in the current meta of CS, like you're always giving the bomb to the opper, because you're gonna rely on that player to win you the late game, and whereas a rifler, you rely on the rifler to win you the early game pretty much. So I guess yeah.
When you went from 2018 to 2019, and one of the changes was obviously Stewie came in instead of Tackle, but the other change was coaching. Zeus went, because obviously Zeus and Tackle, people remember, went back to MIBR. Well, they went to MIBR, obviously the lineup they used to play in. Right, when AdreN came into your team, right, obviously AdreN was actually from the era before you, if people don't remember. It was with Nitro and Elysian. So I wanted to know, actually, what was your perception of the difference between Zeus and AdreN? What was AdreN like as a coach? What did he bring to a team?
I think Zeus and AdreN had opposite personalities, but they both still benefited the team in the right way. Because we took out a person that was kind of quiet emotionally and brought in a person that was loud emotionally in Stewie, and then swapped a loud coach for a quieter coach.
I see.
Yeah, a quieter coach that was more tactically sound and understood the game better. And it kind of felt like we just had the same thing as before, but in better roles per se. And yeah, I think it was a good transition, and honestly, another change that wasn't even the players' decisions. We didn't want to replace Zeus or Taco; they just left. So you can say that Liquid Era just happened to be that way, and the roster ended up being some dynasty, but it wasn't on purpose.
That's interesting, because I mean, the perception from the outside would be that it was the players who wanted Stewie, or you know, some jazz. It was just you were just basically told one day, like, these players are leaving, and we're going to fill their spots.
Yeah, I mean, when two people want to leave, the organizations have to figure out a way to make a transfer happen, and sometimes you can't sell a player fast enough, so you do a 1-for-1 trade, and that's pretty much happened. But AdreN was free, so that's why it was easier for this roster move to work, whereas Stewie was just traded 1-for-1 for with Taco.
Okay, makes sense. Right, one thing I wanted to ask was this. If people remember, obviously the year started great because you won that iBUYPOWER Masters tournament, but the problem was this, right? Everyone after the fact, because of that whole scenario, like the event was a little bit scuffed, if people don't know, there was the whole like security thing where like the event was getting delayed because did they have metal detectors and people calling like bomb threats or some fucking mad shit like that. Then there was the whole thing where like I heard like the stage setup just was a bit dodgy or whatever. So the problem with this, right, is people kind of, it felt like people wanted to put an asterisk after that. Do you think that win counted over Astralis? Was it a scuffed setup? How would you set it up for us if no one was there? How would you explain it?
I'd say absolutely the win counts. I mean, the actual on-stage setup itself, you could not hear the crowd at all. I think the PCs were great. So I don't think the actual on-stage setup was bad. I think the group stage setups were terrible. Like our first game, I think it was a BO1. I don't even know how to remember this. It was a BO1 against Luminosity. They're like this lineup with like Yell and stuff, I think.
Oh, okay.
And we're playing like in the rafters where like people are usually sitting like in a club, you know, where they're at their table, and there's people behind us, and the only thing separating us between the crowd and the players is caution tape. And you could hear everything. Like, we weren't given noise canceling headsets, so we were playing with HyperX at the time, and you could hear everything the crowd was saying. So we basically played a BO1 with both teams not having any sound. And yeah, that's probably the worst part of the event, besides the person tweeting that they had a gun at the certain aisle and the certain seat, and that
There you
delayed
go,
the
that's
entire
it.
event. Yeah.
What about this then? Because to me, like, that win obviously was very significant if you're a Team Liquid player after you've been through all these fucking matches where you're never beaten. Because if people don't know, there's been historical incidences where, you know, one team is like heavily favoured in a match. Like, obviously, you guys against Navi used to beat them most of the time. But it's not like they could never ever beat you. Whereas the bizarre thing about Team Liquid was, famously, Team Liquid never did beat Astralis. It didn't matter what part of the tournament you played them in, what fucking country, what's that. So to finally get the win, like, as you say, especially if you didn't think it was some scuff, as long as the match itself was legit, that must symbolise something, right? Was that a moment where it felt like, right, this year's different?
Yeah, I think so. Instantly, that's where it felt different. I mean, we suffered an entire year of losses to, in a final always, to BO5s, BO3s to Astralis, and then to start the year off with 1 week of practice with our new team to win a complete BO3 against Astralis felt amazing, and I think it did kickstart a lot of, I guess, momentum for that roster. And I mean, I think the Charles players themselves were upset after that loss. You know, I think Matt just said.
Oh, actually, did get to them a bit. Like, you think if they it counted for them as well?
I think so. I think that they were frustrated with this loss, and I mean, as a competitor, I mean, you should be. You know, like,
sure.
If you're a Charles, you're like, okay, we just beat these guys the whole fucking year, and now we just lose them when they only have 1 week of practice. That if I'm a Charles player, I would be upset and I would be hungry to, you know, try to come back and do better.
What happened in the Katowice tournament? Because if people don't know, it's actually happened also at the Face It Major, but that part's past. We're on to the 2019 now. At Katowice, I don't know if you know this, but the hype among all the analysts and all the players was that actually Team Liquid in scrims is the best team and that they're going to win this major. If you don't know this, just like the Face It Major, you actually did low-key bait people like Chad and the rest of them into making loads of predictions on your behalf. And obviously, it goes out saying nobody, like, even if someone thought Astralis was better, no one thought you were losing to ENCE. If people don't know at the time, I always tell people this, the ENCE team really did come out of nowhere because they'd already had that lineup like ages in the last year and they were just like, you know, an alright team. So I heard the story from like Naf or something that, like, this is in real life. He told me something mad that, like, you really did just think like, oh, there's no way that ENCE team's beat us, and like they barely prepped and just thought looked past them. Is that true? Did he sort of look like, well, we'll probably play Navi in the semis and Astralis? Did the team fall into that trap?
In terms of not preparing, I think that part's false. I remember this was a new format, and it was the first time where we had a week in between group stage and playoffs.
Right, okay.
And we had 5 days to prepare, and man, I think we got in our own heads like so bad in the 5 days. I think we over-prepared really bad.
Oh, okay.
And in a way where we knew everything that they were doing, but we had no game plan for ourselves. So we had no like counter strats, no like setups to punish the tendencies of these players, and I think that's how we lost. And then on a personal note, I think I had some distractions that event, and I own up to that, and I wasn't on my best game for some of the event. So yeah, but I think as a team going into the semifinal, yeah, I mean I felt like we were the favorites for the whole event. I think it's right. I mean, I think other teams and players said it in scrims we're pretty unbeatable. And for ourselves, I felt like we thought that this was like, you know, our time to win. I think it was a major, right? Katowice was a major?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if there was any time for a Team Liquid to win a major, I think it actually was Katowice, and we fucked it up. So, it's just, I think as a team, a failure.
So after that, if people remember, you had another Blast final where you played against Team Astralis in the rematch. But this was the one where it went 3 maps again, but then like the third one, as I remember, was like some massive stomp and they just won easily or whatever the fuck. Like, do you remember this matchup?
I don't know.
I think it was Sao Paulo, if I'm correct on that one. I think it was Brazil, right?
Yeah, it was Sao Paulo. I'm not sure if it was a complete. I think the first map was a complete stop.
Might be the way around.
I'm trying to remember. I always know that the 3 maps we played were Inferno, Dust 2, and Overpass.
Pretty much always
the decider.
Yes.
And I remember we did lose on Overpass, like 16-12 or something. Okay. And yeah, I know for sure it was 3 map series, but yeah, I mean, for us, I think it did suck to lose them again because but I think that only happened because of our loss at Katowice, probably. we got humbled like pretty hard at that event, and we had to work some things out again.
I think it was pretty shortly after, if people don't remember. It was maybe like a week or two afterwards, I think, that tournament. So I think you're right. Right. What I want to ask is this. Right, I notice no one ever bloody asks Team Liquid people this, because unfortunately, if you notice, the way most people do interviews is you either go like Hollywood version, which is every wins a world championship and everything's just celebrating how great it is, or you just like ask only for like a drama angle. But I always like something nuanced with some sophistication. So this is the question I have, right? People will know that if we go just on all the stats of the Team Liquid Grand Slam win from Sydney through to technically they even continued after the Grand Slam win. If people don't know, you won Chicago afterwards, which is also a Grand Slam event. People don't know that you actually won 5 in a row. Wasn't even just 4 in the 62 days or whatever the fuck it was. But if you lay all the stats out, it sounds great. But obviously, the real reason why this narrative started slowly and then peaked was because at the beginning, everyone just kept saying it's just because Astralis has skipped the event. Because if you remember, they skipped like Sydney, Pro League. They skipped like most of the events. The joke was, that's why I kept calling them Blastralis. The only fucking place they were was Blast. And then later on at Cologne and, like Pro League, the only kind of the events they had to be at, and then the Blast tournaments. What did Liquid themselves, what did you guys think when you were winning these tournaments? And listen, you were beating the other teams that were there. You can only beat the teams that turn up. But everyone else is saying, like, yeah, but they aren't there. Yeah, but what if that team was there? Like, what did Liquid think of that? Did all the championships count for you guys? Did you ever yourself wonder, well, what would happen if they turned up?
If I remember it correctly, we were beyond happy to win Sydney and DreamHack, but in our mind, we always told ourselves we want to fucking beat Astralis like in playoffs and events. And we got the opportunity right after DreamHack, I think, at Pro League, and we beat them in the quarterfinals. And then I forget who we played after that. All I know is that we played G2 in the final. But yeah, we beat them in the quarterfinal. And I remember it was third map Vertigo, and I had a like pretty rough game individually. But yeah, I think after that we're just like, okay, we fucking did it, you know? Like there's no more, like people can't say anything anymore. Like we beat this team like when it really mattered. And after that, I think that's when, if anything, it just gave us more confidence to keep going.
Because the reason I ask, like, internally, what did Liquid think is people remember there was also a famous shift, finally, in the fucking interviews where before you beat them at Pro League, I noticed all the interviews were always like the same thing. It was always like, oh, we've won, but, of course, like, Astralis is the best, and, we'd have to play them. Like, everyone said the right things. Yeah. But I was always worried, like, dude, do people believe that? Because if they believe that, then everyone knows where the story goes. You meet them finally, they're going to beat you, and they'll just be number one again. But I noticed after this was where you and Elige in interviews both started to actually in interviews say, like, no, we're the best, we're going to win the Grand Slam, we're going to win the major. Like, people start to like speak the way a champion should, right?
Yeah, I think in our minds we knew the level of CSI we're playing was really, really good. I mean, we're winning events for a reason, and of course, like, you win the events, but you're not playing every team. You're the one team that was still like, I think only after DreamHack is when we took the #1 spot on HLTV. But before that, even after the Sydney win, we were still like number 2. And we still wanted the #1 spot really bad. So, of course, for us, even after winning 2 events, like, we still looked at them as the #1 team, at least like our rival, and we really wanted to beat them. So I think after that, it's right, certain players on the team getting a lot of confidence, and I was happy enough to say that we're the best team in the world because I felt like we worked really hard for it.
Even though Cologne at this point in time wasn't a major anymore, that must be like, look, just winning Cologne in itself is like a moment in a lot of people in their career envision to one of the great places to win, But to complete the Grand Slam there, that must have been a really surreal moment, like some movies type scene, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I'm trying to remember, it still feels so unreal to the moment of winning, and I mean to win. I mean, it felt like a major, I feel. Like, this Grand Slam, it felt really special to us. And I remember before the event, before Cologne, we didn't realize how close we actually were to the Grand Slam until we were in playoffs of Cologne. Because I forget. It's because we actually almost skipped Cologne.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
We almost skipped Cologne, and we played a CIS qualifier to qualify again for Cologne. And I think that's why, for us, we didn't actually think that how close we were. So, but yeah, I mean, all of our wins started to feel more and more better. But I think to finish it all off, the Cologne one was by far the best, and then winning LA and Chicago afterwards was kind of just. I mean, man, our confidence was so high. Like, I brought my family members up to Chicago, and I was like, Do you want to see me win?" And that was kind of like the way it was, you know. I was just so confident. The whole team was so confident. I mean, we weren't really even practicing that much at the time, and we were just using all of our same stuff because we just felt like it was just working no matter what we did. And I mean, incredible time for North American Counter-Strike.
I'd also say as well, like the way that the team was dominating at the time, I'd actually have to draw parallels, like for example, to that FaZe team that you were talking about when they were smashing the whole New York event. It was like that. Like, listen, every now and then there'd be like a 3-map series. Aside from that, you were having maps where it's like the team would just cruise to like 16 wins over seemingly anyone, right? It must have felt very easy to play the game at the time.
It actually did. Even I remember we lost the BO1 to North open event, and we started in the lower bracket. And no one broke a sweat. Like everyone was just like, "It's fine, guys. Like we're not losing the event." And then we just went on to win the event, and that's kind of the whole mentality of the team. Everyone was super calm, and for the most part, everyone got along. And yeah, I think that sums up the liquid summer run.
How would you describe the way Liquid played the meta at this time? Because I always thought a very interesting thing was, since you came on the heels of the Astralis era, everyone remembers, I think, like you said about Liquid earlier, I think it's even actually part of why the Astralis era lasted so long. They sort of tricked everyone else into thinking you had to play Astralis CS to win, so Team Liquid started trying to do it. I felt like all the squads started trying to play them all like that, and the joke is actually that made them even better. But everyone remembers that era was not just tactics, it was like all the utility usage, it was the idea that like you bait out all the utility before you go on the site. People don't remember, Team Liquid was probably, considering you're the number one team at this time, the team that seemed to need the least utility to get on a site. Like people would just run in dry, or you do the classic counter to utility play, by the way, from the CTs, is you run past the utility. They're throwing the counter flash, but you're just running in the site dry and you shoot them. Like that style seems really effective at the time.
Yeah, I think Nick really understood the meta, or Nitro, and I think I mean we're the team that used a lot of nades to get map control, and use a small amount of nades to fake somewhere and just flood onto the site. And I think for the entire year we held on to the highest trade percentage. I can't remember what it was, but it was some like absurd stats where like we were pretty much guaranteed the trade like into a site at all costs, even in a 4v5, I think. And yeah, I mean, I think actually I read this recently. I didn't know it actually was said at the time, but Alex from Vitality gave an interview where he said, I don't even think their tactics are that great. You just can't even out-aid them.
There you go.
That's what he said. And he was like, yeah. And then the actual code itself was the only thing that can stop them is the player break, which ironically enough it did.
Hey, listen, he didn't miss on that one, you know.
At least that was fucking outstanding call by Alex, honestly.
True. That's a pretty good read. I can't lie. Because I'm pretty sure I even memed on that myself at the time. Like, you better hope so. But it's like, actually, you know what, Alex, you win that one. You can have that one, mate. You can have that. But what about this though? But cause obviously, I'm trying to purposely set it up here before we get to the disappointing part to find out like about the best period. What I want to ask was this. I also thought as well that the way that the team dominated also must have engendered a great atmosphere, because you almost like did it by committee. Like realistically, even if Elige won like a bunch of the MVPs, like there could be you, Elige. Now anyone could be the top fragger in the game. Obviously, depending on what the map is, I'd even say would depend on who frags out. Who, like this wasn't like there's a simple and he has to have odd numbers. Like you see even now in Vitality, zews still has to be a superstar if they want to be the best. You know, like it wasn't like that in Liquid. This was a very balanced squad.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a combination of many things. I mean, obviously, Nick was a very supportive op, and I think in the meta it was perfect because it gave a lot of room to Naf, Elige, and myself to have an op supporting them and then covering them and going into a site. I think it was the best time for Liquid to have an opper. I think Nick did a great job, and yeah, I mean, it was always a balance. Team effort, and at that point in time, any one of us could really have a good game. I remember even Nick like dropped 30 a couple times, just having great op holds on overpass, and I think there's really rarely any cracks in our gameplay before the Berlin Major. I think everything was pretty flawless, and I mean, like you said, anyone could get the MVP, but at the time we were just racking up so many trophies that we're just happy to, after a whole year of failure, to finally fucking break through and win everything.
When you were in this period where you had the player break and then you came to the major, right? I have noticed in history anyway, player breaks do just seem to do some sort of weird artificial reset to like how good teams are. Like, basically, if you notice, the form of a team almost just disappears. Like, look, you still might end up being one of the better teams afterwards, but it doesn't seem like anyone ever comes into the break and then somehow it picks up exactly where they left off. Because I always say, if people look at that Starladder Berlin major, it's all well and good to say Team Liquid suffered from the break. Everyone did. Remember, the top 4 teams at the time was you, Astralis, Vitality, and ENCE.
Yeah.
Look at how it went for fucking Vitality and ENCE. And remember, Astralis was almost losing to like that crazy team in best of threes and stuff. Like, everyone looked worse. Like, what do you think the effect was? Because obviously that was a major, the first event after the break. So everyone, remember, some of those breaks, some people do practice, but some people go to the fucking Maldives or something, you know. So what was that break like for Liquid? Because we've heard these stories that like apparently like you lose every scrim or it just crushed people's confidence. What do you think happened?
Personally, for myself, I think I said this in an interview before. I had to move during the break, so I didn't have a setup for a decent amount of time. I didn't have a setup for a majority of the break actually, and it was like whatever for me. But I think what really killed it was our team atmosphere. Like after the player break did end, it's hard to pinpoint a reason, but everything felt, I guess, just off. Everything just felt completely off, and like you said, we were pretty much losing every scrim. We did beat Astralis though in scrims, so they were looking not so great either. If we were losing every scrim and we still beat Astralis in scrims, and then going into event, we scraped by with some very close wins. Whereas before the break, like these games like weren't even close for us. So I remember to get in the playoffs, we had to win 2 overtimes in a row against Mel Sports. Very very tough maps to play for us, and it was exhausting. And you could see the reactions of my teammates, everyone just taking a deep breath and like, Jesus, that was close. And I mean, like I said, it's hard to pinpoint a reason, but I think that's 2019, the player break is, I guess when I get to reflect now, I can see that's like when you really get to see that all these like tier 2 and tier 3 teams just don't take a break and they're just working like so fucking hard. And I think they indirectly cause like a meta change, because obviously the tier 1 teams like look at these tier 2 and tier 3 teams and they still can take stuff from these teams, Sometimes they come up with like innovative things, but the game felt different to play like after the break. Teams played completely different. It was a whole new style.
Because one thing about this that I always found really puzzling is, I've told this story on By the Numbers and like publicly before, right? When I do my analysis, if I'm on the desk like I was at that event, I actually have a rule, which is, essentially, I'm one of the only analysts who does this. I'll give you the example. I said earlier where I sort of laughingly said that like you guys sort of baited people like Sponge, etc., to wreck themselves on the desk because they were hearing all the hype. So what they were doing is thinking, well, I've got inside info no one else has, so I'm going to be like, I'm going to look like I'm the 200 IQ guy. This team to win. Basically, I always do the opposite of that, because the problem is, Twistzz, I've just heard too many stories from players over the years where like someone in the number 1 team's like, we're doing so shit now, and then they just like rock the whole event, or vice versa. Someone's so confident from scrims, we're so good, just get ready, this is the event, and then they come out like 9th place. So what I learned is I just view it on what I've seen in the official matches. I try to go off that only, right? But even though I said to some of the Liquid players, like I told fucking Narf, Stewie, that I told them I'm going to pick you to beat Astralis in this tournament. Dude, the guys were telling me before the match, don't do it. They were saying, no, we won't win. Like they're going to beat us. And I was trying I was trying to tell them, like I was like the hype man, like, dude, you've won like 22 series in a row. Like I said, just forget it. Like, like the form isn't great now, but like in the match that can change. You can just wake up, it can just be like before, the dynamics, but the problem is like in their minds, like I don't think they really thought it was impossible, but I think they did feel like something was wrong with this event. And it, like, put it this way, I've never heard players who were like I said, you were on 22 streak series. Like I've never heard anyone who's in this kind of like, all this evidence to say like, maybe I can do it. Like it felt like they just mentally a little bit quit before the game, dude. Yeah,
I mean, hearing that now, I mean, the way we played...
It was rough, especially because I then did predict you to win, so I was like, bloody hell.
The way we played, I guess, what you're saying could be true. In my mind, I never felt like we were going to lose. I just felt like it was going to be a really hard game for us to win, and we really had to, like, we actually did have to be the tactically better team, because I think individually, as players, like, our form wasn't as good. So this is the point in time where we need our team play to be as good as possible. And at the time, I think our team play was so good. So if we played our A game, as a team. I think the series could have been ours, and I'm not sure if it ended up being 3 maps or not. All I ever see about the series is this Vertigo pick,
Of course.
which is fucking crazy. Because like, if people remember, this map was updated 2 weeks before the major.
Yes.
Where in a time where people are kind of, I mean, some teams are still on break. Seriously, well, this map's being updated, so it actually did surprise us that they pick a map that just got updated, and I think that's the only reason to call us off guard. Honestly, it's just fucking, I don't know, insane veto, and it worked for them. They prepared.
Yeah. This is something I wanted to ask about, though, because I do think, though, that people took that storyline and made it too much like a movie, you know, because they tried to make it sound like, you know, this was Astralis' fucking Mighty Ducks flying V technique, and they'd been practicing just for this one. Whereas, like, the reality is, if you go and look, it's not like they were picking that against other people. They clearly, as you say, they did it against you just because it was sort of left field it would happen, because, like, you'd actually won the map every time you'd played the previous version.
Yeah.
It's just been updated, and if people don't know, they weren't even, like, a Vertigo team, so it's just on paper, everyone assumed, like, actually, it's a pretty obvious veto, you know, we'll have, like, Inferno, whatever, Inferno nuke, somewhere else, right? Like, it'll be a usual, the Just 2 overpass, you know, the classic maps between the 3. So I also wondered as well, if, like, the order helped them there, because remember, it's not always up to you whether you're the team who plays your map first or the other map first. That map starting, though, do you think that map being the first map through the team? Because, I mean, it wasn't even, look, I don't even think Astralis actually had tons planned for that dude. I think they just wanted to put you off your comfort zone, in my opinion, and then they just hoped that they would be the more controlled veterans, as it were, you know?
I think so. I think anytime a team does a veto like this, from the opponent's side, or from, like, our perspective, would be like, they're the ones that feel like they're the underdogs.
Exactly.
It's like us in Cologne 2021, like, picking Ancient on Gambit. We did that because we're the underdogs and we have fucking nothing to lose anymore, and we're gonna pick it. For Astralis, it was like, I feel like it's similar. I mean, they still have stuff to lose, but it's a very underdog pick. And if only my teammates, I guess, at the time looked at the same way. I mean, I don't remember how I looked at it. I was probably warming up while the veto happened anyway. So, but yeah, I think you could be right. Imagine if, like, Dust 2 was the map to kick off the series. You know, a map where both teams get to warm up, and then, you know, moves on the Vertigo. It could be a different story. I mean, remember, this is like the Krieg meta. Like, the Krieg meta was so annoying to play Vertigo for 2 reasons. I mean, it's tough initially. First gun round CTs, you're trying to play against Kriegs walking up A or B, but then when you're on the other side and you lose the first gun round and the enemy team has like 4 Kriegs, it's over. Like, and the CTs have 3 or more Kriegs, it's extremely hard to play the game at that time. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there was really a flaw like in our veto, because obviously at the time, you're right, we were a really good Vertigo team, and we just didn't practice it with the update, and that's the only reason it caught us off guard.
Right, there's a flaw in how fans think about weapon balance, and it goes like this. Right, because in theory the Krieg was overpowered, that means everyone who uses it gets to enjoy the fact it's overpowered. Yeah. But I actually always did, believe it or not, even though I disagreed with the fact Nico didn't use it, because I do think that he could have gotten some easier kills, the reason I always understood why he was mad that it was strong, to a fan, doesn't make sense, but it's like this. You've essentially just lowered the gap in between rifling prowess, because he was the best AK, but now a load of people that if it's pure AK versus AK, Nico's going to be like up here and they're down here. It's like if we're all using Kriegs, then it's like there's that much gap between everyone, you know, and it's like everyone gets the spray kill, everyone gets the kill eventually. Like, I'd imagine you must be more in the Nico camp on that one, right? Wouldn't it have suited Twistzz better if it was just a pure AK meta?
Yeah, I actually think that's how it was for me, and I was upset about the fucking gun. I was upset for it for half of 2019, and going into 2020, I was still upset about it, because I think you're right. It did lower the skill gap, and I remember I said this to Kerrigan, like, during Pro League, actually. I was like, man, isn't it crazy that the Krieg was the only indirect nerf to the AWP? That's literally it. That was the only
true
nerf the AWP has actually had recently, was another gun being better than an AK. And yeah, I mean, it did lower the skill gap between rifling. I mean, the Krieg spray was so easy, and then scoping, like holding an angle. I mean, yeah, it was very easy frags, like, for whoever got the Krieg and used it. I mean, I'm very happy it's not in the game anymore.
This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadju, Matt Pugnatio Rakula, Travis Goff, Adam Oaks, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Go, Joseph Ginsberg, Kovacevic, Tobias Bernasconi, Toucan, William Peyton Lacey, Zumba, Zyrathenia, and as always, special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are? Maybe you want to take part in a lengthy donator discussion with me? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skilluminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box.